Alright, so we're going to talk about dot product today. And the dot product, it's really important that you understand it is a scalar. Whatever your answer is will be a number when you're talking about the dot product. And then we'll use the dot product. So in order to find the dot product, if you're given two vectors like v and w here, we have a1, b1, and a2, b2. And so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply a1 times a2 and add that to b1 times b2. Okay? And then that will add together to give you a number, which will be your dot product. So, if we have these two guys here, 2i minus 3j and 5i plus 3j, we need to say, alright, for a, we're going to go 2 times 5 plus negative 3 times 3. Okay? So that's 10 minus 9, which equals 1. So v dot w is 1. If you were to go in reverse, say w dot v, we would have 5 times 2 plus 3 times negative 3, and lo and behold, we end up with 1 again. Okay, so that's a property of dot products. That means that no matter which way you multiply, you'll get the same answer. All right. V dot v, so we would use the same so we're going to use 2 and 3 and negative 3 twice. We got 2 times 2 plus negative 3 times negative 3. That is going to be 13. So 13 there. And then if we want to find our magnitude squared, we're going to see another property of the dot product. So we take the magnitude, you get the square root of 2 squared plus negative 3 squared. And then you square that, you'll end up with 13 again. So v dot v is going to be the same. V dot v here is the same as your magnitude squared. Okay? So that's another property of the dot product. Alright, so now we want to use the dot product to find the angle between two vectors. If you have two angles, u and v, and they're non-zero vectors in a plane, this should say plane here, not plan, sorry. The theta, or angle between the two vectors, is always going to be between 0 and pi. Okay, so 0 and 180. Will never be larger than 180. Alright, so we have this formula here. Cosine of theta equals u dot v over the two magnitudes multiplied together. Dot product of two vectors over the magnitudes multiplied together. Once that's found, you need to take the inverse of cosine of that value to find theta. Okay? So, if we're working here, we're going to find v dot w, which is going to be 2 times 5 plus negative 3 times 3, which we got as 1. Magnitude of v is going to be the square root of 2 squared plus negative 3 squared, which equals root 13. And then the magnitude of w, which equals the square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared, which ends up equaling the square root of 34. Okay. So we now take the 1, that's our dot product, put it over root 13 times root 34, and you would, which equals 1 over root 442, which you, when you rationalize, becomes root 442 over 442. Okay. If you want to see what the decimal of that is, you're going to divide 2. So we get about 0.047. So we know that right now cosine of theta equals what this was, which is about 0.05. So then I need to take the inverse cosine of 0.05 to get my theta. So when I take second cosine, second answer, I get 87.3 degrees. Okay? Alright, so parallel or orthogonal. Parallel vectors happens when the two vectors have an angle between each other of 0. Okay? Okay, if the angle between two vectors is 0, they are said to be parallel. Another way to look at it is if you can consider the two components of each vector multiples of the corresponding components, then they're also 0. So like in this case here, 3 and 6. 6 is a multiple of 3, right? So is 2 and 1. Negative 2 and negative 1, rather. So because both components in each vector are multiples of each other, they are also parallel vectors, okay? But to go through the process, if their angles between them are 0, then they are also parallel, so we're going to do that. V dot W equals 18 plus 2, which equals 20, and 3 times 6 is 18, negative 1 times negative 2 is 20. And then the magnitude of V is going to equal square root of 3 squared plus negative 1 squared, which equals 9 plus 1, which equals the root 10. And then square root of W equals square root of 36. Excuse me, that's 6 squared from up here, plus 4. That was the negative 2 squared. So you get root 40, which equals 2 root 10. Okay? So, once we go and find that cosine of theta equals our v dot w, which is 20, over root 10 times 2 root 10, we find that that equals 20 over 20. So now we have cosine of theta equals 1. Well, the inverse cosine of 1 is 0. Okay? So, what that means is that these two are parallel. As soon as you get a theta equals 0, you know for certain they're parallel. Again, you can look at the coefficients and see if they're multiples of each other. That also will tell you that they're 0.